What's your exit strategy for that property? If you bought a property that's high end and, now it's not, no one's going, it's 800, 900, $1,000 a night. Now the market has shifted or it got saturated, because that's the other thing. You have to think about all your competition. Then what's your exit strategy with that property? So for me personally, I am very conservative.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast, because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast. We're super excited to be speaking today with an awesome guest. We're going to talk about lots of short-term rentals and recession-proofing your investments. The market's turning a lot these days, mostly down. We want it to go back up. And I think that our guest, Nancy Wallace-Laabs, has a lot of ideas as to how to help with that. We're also going to learn about the conference that she's putting on. It's specifically for real estate investing, and it's geared toward women. And we can't wait to hear more about that conference. And I want to welcome Nancy to the podcast. Nancy, it's been a long time coming. You've been trying to have this recording for a long time. So thank you for bearing with us and working with our schedule changes. That's all been on us. So thank you finally for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited and, getting through COVID and, whatever else, life throws at us. You just got to kind of go with the flow, right?
That is our mantra these days here in 2022, right? We're with Rory Gill, attorney with Urban Village Legal and a real estate broker in Boston, next home Titletown Real Estate.
Hey, Jason, Rory. I'm excited for this wide-ranging conversation with Nancy.
I threw in a little howdy there because, Nancy, you're in Texas, right?
I am, and it's blazing hot here. It's like we are in the grip of a heat wave, and we're just praying that none of our grids give out, because I'd rather be cold and throw out wood on the fireplace than be hot and have no AC. So,
well, then you should come up here to New England sometime. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. We recorded an episode a while back with an amazing attorney named Galen Hare, and he was talking about the grid in Texas and when it failed, what happened, because a lot of that was unexpected. But, he was talking about how a lot of the insurance claims were denied because of, what was the issue, Rory?
It wasn't included that people didn't have riders and endorsements on their policies for that eventuality.
Oh, yeah. That'll be in our topic of short-term rentals. That's one of the things I harp about is the right insurance, because I actually had a short-term rental that got hit by the grid failure.
Wow.
A pipe broke and basically flooded half of my short-term rental.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to start there a little bit and give a little bit of background to your experience. So you're a real estate investor, you're in short-term rentals, but give us a quick little orientation about yourself and where you fit into real estate.
Okay. So I'm a real estate broker here in Texas, and I started, my journey started in Phoenix, Arizona, when the market was going crazy back then. And my husband and I saw an opportunity, not in real estate. We just said, hey, we're taking the money and running. We sold our home, moved to Texas. And I had always had an interest in real estate investing, watched a lot of HGTV. And I was fortunate enough to find someone who mentored me. And I ended up getting into property management. I bought my first rental. And that was almost 20 years ago. And I had a property management company for long-term rentals. And I did that for quite a while. And then in 2018, we flipped over to short-term rentals because the market. So I feel that one of my strengths is really reading the market when things start to change and things like that. And I think my background in property management has helped me, because you got to be super, and there's a certain way you have to handle people and complaints and things like that. So I think that helped me with my career in short-term rentals.
Yeah. We were talking before we hit record about short-term rentals and customer service. I mean, it really is a customer service business, isn't it?
It is. We were talking about all the different, I think people can get discouraged. So a couple of things to the audience. Number one, when you first start with short-term rentals, don't go to Facebook and start reading all the bad comments. Anything in real estate investing, you have to do your due diligence. So when I work with people that want to get into short-term rentals, the first thing, not every property makes a good short-term rental. just because you have a 3-bedroom or 5-bedroom, and it doesn't mean it should. There's so many more things that goes into just having a short-term rental. And it's a hot topic right now. I do a lot of speaking about how to get started, operate management of short-term rentals. So I think people just have to be cognizant that, yes, it's a great way to get into real estate investing now, but then, someday that bubble is going to bust, just like it always does. And then what's your exit strategy for that property? If you bought a property that's high end, now it's not, no one's going, it's $800, $900, $1,000 a night. Now the market has shifted, or it got saturated, because that's the other thing. You have to think about all your competition. Then what's your exit strategy with that property? So for me personally, I am very conservative when I buy properties, and I usually keep it under, 275, 250, regardless of what I'm buying, because no matter what, I can always turn it into something, a short-term rental, a long rental, an owner finance property. And that kind of just goes into I'm always feel like you need to have at least 2 exit strategies every time you buy a property, and that keeps your portfolio strong.
Yeah.
No, that's a great way to think about it. And with the short-term rentals, I think it's a great first step for a lot of people who otherwise may not be able to break into the market, because part of the trade-off is you're doing a lot more work to squeeze out that cash flow out of a property. So it's a great first step. And also, if likely to completely succeed or completely fail, there's such a middle ground in there with short-term rentals. With a long-term rental, you could sit with the vacancy for 6 months or something if you just can't find a tenant to take the space. But with a short-term rental, you might have a higher vacancy rate than you want, but that's still a lot better than zero.
Well, and also just on that with the tenants, a lot of people, it's great to, know how to do the due diligence and get that long-term rental, but they don't know how to screen for the right tenant. So then they get a tenant in there for 6, 12 months that hasn't paid rent. And, a lot of landlords learned some hard lessons with, COVID. We were talking how COVID has kind of put a bad taste in landlords' mouth, because a lot of tenants didn't have to pay rent during COVID. And I thought it was interesting that the payments were going to the tenant and not the landlord. You know what I mean? And you couldn't evict them. So, kind of a double-edged sword there, I think it really affected landlords that had 10 or less properties, because the banks weren't saying don't pay, right? Did anybody see that, or did I miss that memo? So
I missed that one too.
Yeah. So I thought that's very interesting that you can't evict a non-paying tenant, but, and then if they did try to take a forbearance, then they're just upside down. I mean, it just didn't seem very favorable to the landlords. So, and that was unfortunate. And really, I don't think anybody could have predicted that, when we're talking about recession proof and that kind of thing.
The past 2 years, there's been a lot that people couldn't have predicted, and we were saying one of our short-term rentals is in Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is on the tip of Cape Cod. It's a vacation destination. The summer population swells to 60,000 people per day. And the, full-time residency is about 4,000 a day in the off season. And it's a beautiful little town. And when COVID hit, we couldn't rent. We weren't allowed to. The town kind of put a moratorium to that. Plus, people weren't traveling, and our calendar went totally unbooked until things came back. And then we basically took whatever rentals we can get and made it through the year. Then the next year was the absolute best year that we had, period. And it just kind of keeps going up from there.
Yes.
But no one could have predicted that. I mean, I think that if it was, short of a global pandemic, the popularity would just continue to rise. And sure enough, that's what happened. We had a global pandemic. And
I think it's a good lesson for all of us, though, because you always kind of have to be prepared, right? So, having cash reserves, having, an exit strategy, maybe not that, gotten you through 2 years, but I think when you look at short-term rentals, especially what we've been through, and people don't want to lose their properties, but, kind of recession-proof where people go. So we tend to buy kind of close to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've never ventured outside the state, mostly because I don't have trusted boots on the ground, where I'm going to go buy a short-term rental and that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of focus in my own backyard. But Dallas-Fort Worth, even Dallas County, they kept lockdowns a lot longer than some of the other counties around. Got a letter from our HOA, and basically, and this is in my own neighborhood, saying you can't do short-term rentals. I don't know if people were doing short-term rentals, but it seems like there's more spotlight on short-term rentals. And so, you have the party houses or whatnot, then complaints and neighborhoods trying to get shut down. Look at some of the areas in California, they've made legislation to say you can't do short-term rentals, and that affects people's livelihoods. I'm kind of against that. So I don't really have any, legalese, because we're always police department about how to fight that, but it seems that they shouldn't be able to do that, that you should have, like maybe an association of short-term rental people in a neighborhood that can be representative. And I'm not saying I want to live next door to a party house, but I have short-term rentals. I'm a good host. And I think if we promote good hosts and not bad party houses, then I think that's where neighbors get upset about.
The right response in mind for a short-term rental investor, and that's to have multiple exit strategies or investment strategies, because the regulatory risk is there. There are places that are used to short-term rentals, and it's nothing new. Airbnb, VRBO might just be a platform that's relatively new in these places, but they've been renting short-term rentals at the lakes for decades. But places like, in the city of Boston, there's a housing shortage. So the city more or less banned Airbnbs. They didn't ban it, but they regulated to the point of making it unfeasible for most people to do it there. But you're going to have a huge patchwork of these regulations, and they can change quickly. So having that second or third use for a property, knowing what your short-term rental would look like as a long-term rental, if you had to sell it, what's your equity and capital growth in that property, and kind of always be mindful of that, because you may have to turn quickly to an alternative strategy.
Exactly. And I agree, because I think in Texas, we're seeing a huge shortage of affordable housing. And so then that kind of points out more and more, people are doing more and more short-term rentals and that kind of thing. So I totally agree. So I try to be, the best host I can be. I don't go knocking on my neighbors' doors, but by the same token, I have them knocking on my door either. So
yeah,
my goal is that they don't even know it's a short-term rental. So
yeah, I think the cat's out of the bag for us, frankly, in New Hampshire, because we've started to notice a couple others pop up around the lake that we're on, because people are seeing the success that we've been having. And, not like we hide it, but we certainly don't talk about it unless we're asked. Like, we're not out there pounding our chest that we're doing a lot of short-term rentals. And frankly, we do use the rentals here in New Hampshire. I say rentals because we're sitting in one of them right now that we're hoping to hit the market soon. But it has not hit the market for a couple different reasons. We'll go into that in a whole different podcast. But we do have the one next door that's doing fantastically. And that's the one that we got in 2016. And our neighbors are our boots on the ground. They're our eyes. And, we try to be really good neighbors. We share resources with them. And it helps that some of the neighbors that, tidy up place, they also rent other places themselves. Like they don't do short-term rentals. They might, because they're seeing that we're doing well with it, but they have long-term renters. And other places around this specific lake, as Rory mentioned, they have rented for decades. I mean, to people, whether it's a 12-month rental or summer rental. So we just happen to be in a community that we think hits all the right buttons. Like, number one, it's appreciating. So we have another exit strategy if we need it. Number two, people live here year round. So if we do need to turn it to a 12-month rental, we could easily do that. And number three, there's a culture of short rentals here anyway. So it's like, I think as long as we're good hosts and good neighbors and talking to people and participating in the community, I think we're okay. But, that's our thought here.
I'm actually in a lake community as well. We've had great success. It's about 90 minutes. It's Granbury, Texas. It's about 90 minutes from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We decided to become part of they actually have an association for the Airbnbs to get active in it. And one of the things about the regulations and restrictions, because they're, now, well, I say like there's probably about 300-ish in the community, and the town itself has maybe about 7,800 populace, but it's a huge tourist area. Well, we decided to become involved in the association so that we could get to know the council members, because I think it's good to have the relationships, build the relationships. So if things, they do want to regulate it to some degree, but I think if they get to know you as a person, that they see that you run a great business. In our case, the town itself doesn't have the infrastructure. So they kind of have a moratorium right now on building more hotels. So the town relies on the short-term rentals because they do a wonderful, awesome job of tourism. And they get people there, but if you get people to your town, you need to make sure that they have a place to stay. So that's kind of where we all come in. And so that's been really good. I wanted to circle back just really quick about when we first opened up about the Texas grid. I mentioned it was really hot here. And then we talked about the winter storm, because one of the things I talk to people about is getting the right insurance. People that had said that they got the wrong or they were denied. So in our case, we weren't denied, but I think one of the things that we did, number one, there's only a few carriers here in Texas that handle short-term rental insurance. So, we disclosed that that's what we were doing, because I know some people didn't disclose that and they got to deny, when it came to damage claims. And then we worked with a public adjuster. The insurance companies were overwhelmed. And when I called them on February 19th, so we had a pipe burst. I tried to get down there, it's a long story. But anyway, when I called the insurance company, they were so overwhelmed and they probably knew what was going to happen. And they wanted to settle for like $5,000. That's not going to cut it. Claim was around $50,000. You know what I mean? But I don't think that I would have been successful getting them to pay that. And I needed to actually have a public adjuster work with me to work with they're like the go-between, with the insurance company. And so he was able to probably be more successful on the claim than I ever would. So I think people need to kind of reach out to someone like that, because I think it helps them when they have to file, especially a huge claim.
What's the fee to hire a public adjuster?
So they get 10% of whatever your claim is, you know what I mean? And so they're just paid out of the proceeds of the insurance. And in our case, it was well worth it. It was well worth it, because we would have had to go back and forth. I'm not the insurance company. We've had them for a really long time. But let's just say it was, they would send a guy out with a clipboard, and I usually had more knowledge about what it cost. And remember, during that time, wood and all the materials were going up, up, up. So what they wanted to pay, was not anywhere near. And we had in our policy replacement. They were required to do the replacement. And so we really had to kind of fight for that. And we just didn't, it took a while that happened. I filed the claim on February 19th. We didn't get our property up and ready again until the end of August. Now, the good thing about that is we did have loss of use, which everyone needs to have that in their rental policy. So if they don't know what I'm talking about, they need to call their insurance guy or her gal. And if they don't know what it's about, you need to find another insurance person. Yeah. So we were covered because we actually had the property, rented out as a short-term rental.
Yeah. And the loss of use covered some of the rental income that you would have had or that you lost.
Yeah, it covered all of it for the time period, because we actually had it. We had bookings starting in March all the way through the end of May, and then June and July waiting. So we couldn't, it was still in such a disarray, we couldn't rent it. We just documented it and sent it in.
Now, what happens do you rent on Airbnb and Vrbo, or what platforms do you use?
So we use all of the platforms, but I also am moving towards direct booking. So I don't rely just on Airbnb and VRBO when they, make changes to their platform. So, you can't just do that overnight. You have to move towards it. But yes, we do that. So in the case of, we had one of our, because it's a smaller town, we know a lot of people that own stuff there, restaurants, bars, and things like that. So they actually had some relatives that were coming in, there was a venue. And so we had two of our longer, like they were weeks, and we actually had a rental agreement that had already been, and so that's what we used for the insurance company. In working with the platforms, and like our properties are just on those two platforms. We're really happy with them. But, you mentioned changes to the platforms. I know that Airbnb just reclassified a lot of their properties, and there's a lot of people grumbling about no longer being, we haven't seen the effects of that yet, because our calendars is pretty fully booked in the months it would normally be booked now. Like our fall doesn't really book up and the winter doesn't book up until later on in the year. But I don't know how that's going to affect us because we're already fully booked. But what did those platforms, how do they react to you when you said that you had to cancel bookings that because your property had damage? I know that they don't like that, but is that a phone call that you make to them and you explain what's going on? Fortunately, what happened was the first two bookings that we had were a direct booking, right? So then when May came, because people hadn't booked for June and July, I just halted the calendar so no one could book.
Got it.
So we never actually had cancellations except for the two. One was doing 2 months and the other one was doing 3 weeks. So we just contacted them and let them know what was happening directly, but they were direct books, which was nice. And as far as, the Airbnb changes, I personally haven't noticed anything. We've been steadily booked. Our market, I could be wrong, but for me personally, what's happening is people are booking same or next week or, maybe a couple, 2-3 weeks. They're not booking really, really far out. You know what I mean? They're, and we're summertime here and one of our houses has a pool. So I think that one is booked all through July. So that's probably the furthest it's ever been booked. It's fairly new to the portfolio. But one of the things that I noticed about Airbnb, not so much on VRBO, but I don't know how, I'm not a person. Yeah, I don't understand their algorithms. But I do know if I feel like it's slow and I go in and I do things like, move the pictures around or, snooze it for like a day or maybe just 2 or 3 hours. The other thing I notice is my cancellation policy. So I have not the most relaxed, but a pretty relaxed cancellation policy because as a traveler, things come up and I don't want to have to be responsible for, a week or whatever. So if they cancel within, I think it's the 48-hour one. Anyway, I have found that when the property's been booked and then someone, not me, but someone else canceled, I generally get that property rebooked within 24, 48 hours. There's something about the algorithm now that's only on Airbnb that I've noticed that, but I think somehow when it's snoozed or it's been taken off and then it puts back on, somehow Airbnb goes, oh, look, it's a new listing. Don't know how. I have no data to back it up. I'm just saying, get a cancellation one day, get it booked the next. So, and I also increase the prices when that happens.
Yep. Me too. You sound like you're the voice in my head also with everything you just said right there. And, I think one good lesson is that those are two of the big platforms, right? Like Airbnb, Vrbo. A lot of people just talk about Airbnb as the category. I strongly recommend Vrbo also, but every market is different. Like I could assure you every market's different. Like here in New Hampshire, we get a lot of Vrbo bookings in the summertime far in advance, whereas in Provincetown, I get a lot of Airbnb bookings far in advance and closer to it. So it's like I have to have visibility on both platforms and I have to pay attention to what's happening on both platforms. It's a little bit extra work, and there's a couple systems out there that I'm investigating that should help automate things, whether it's messaging or integration and whatnot. I have heard that if you make adjustments to your profiles, like even if you just change a word, add a period, delete a photo, add a photo, whatever it is, it triggers the fact that it's been updated. Like, because just like search engine optimization, like Google wants you to be paying attention. They don't want you to set it and forget it and then come back 8 months later. They want people that are actively working.
And I'll go in and just another little trick for the audience is I'll go in and I'll adjust by day. So maybe I'll make a Tuesday, $50 lower. And then I'll make the weekend $50 higher. And that seems to work too. And I think it is just the changing. And then I would also, and we've talked about this on the platforms where people have really strict cancellation policies. And again, for me, that doesn't work. So as a traveler, so I try to kind of say, okay, if I'm looking for a place to book, I'm pet friendly, I'm, kid friendly.
Me too.
You just make your properties, because people say, well, how do you do that? I'm like, just do it. You know what I mean? Don't carpet in the house.
Yeah. We just recarpeted next door, like fully recarpeted, because when we bought it, we said we're going to fully recarpet at some point in the future when I'm just tired of carpet cleaning. And it wasn't not conducive to lots of pets next door. It was light carpeting and everything. So we put in some carpeting that was actually, it's nice carpeting. I love the carpeting, and it hides any issues that might happen. Like it's kind of a speckled color and whatnot. We just put it in. So hopefully it'll endure over time.
And I'm not saying we have area rugs. So we just, in Texas, we either have tile, we have vinyl plank, that kind of. Yeah, I say make your properties, because if you go and you do a search, you'll find that a lot of hosts are not pet friendly, and people love to travel with their pets. I'm one of them. So there's ways, and then people love it because we'll leave stuff for the dog. You know what I mean? Like there's pet pads that we have. There's that you put on the furniture, dog bowls. And they love it that you make their dogs feel at home. Now, we're not a cat. We don't do cats. We just do dogs.
We're the same thing.
But cats and I have a cat. You know what I mean? But there's so many little tips and tricks that you can do to really be, yes, you can buy property, stick it on Airbnb, walk away, and you'll probably make some money. You know what I mean? Yeah. But there's so many little tricks that you can do to make even more money. And we do use a platform. I use Hospitable. I like them. They don't have a way to do direct booking. They're moving towards it, but that's okay. I'm still building my book of business, if you will, for direct booking. But I like their automated messages. It's pretty simple. And again, I'm not a techie person. So some of the platform, I know there's other platforms that do a whole lot more. They were just a little more involved than I wanted to go.
Hospitable is the one that is, I have the browser tab open. It's been open for like 2 weeks, like as my way of saying, continue looking at this. I need to assure myself that they could offer something above and beyond what we're already doing, because I feel like a lot of what they offer we're already doing. So we'll investigate a little bit more once we get the third and fourth properties online. Yeah. But go back to pets. I mean, people get so nervous about pets, but I'm telling you, like,
and we charge a pet fee. We, you know, our pet fee is $200. We have a maximum of 2 pets. You know, now we're not talking about service animals. That's a whole different podcast. Yep. So this is your actual pets. And so we'll just say you want to bring 1 dog. I have had people ask me, well, I let them have 3 dogs. And I'll just say, well, what kind of dogs are they? You know, they were 3 little dogs. So whether they have 1 dog or 2 dogs, I'll still charge the $200 pet fee. And what I do with that money is I put it in like a separate account, like not a separate account, but it's like a separate category. So I use that if I ever have damages or extra cleaning. And so far, that's just been piling up. It's not really, I haven't had any extra cleaning, but I think it's also, number one, the furniture. You know, we pet proof the house, so to speak. There's these great pet pads that you can buy on Amazon. And they're not pet pads like they pee on. That's not what I'm talking about. They're furniture covers, but they don't look like furniture covers. They're specifically for pets. We do make sure we have a pet area outside. We provide the little, you know, doggy poop bags, bowls. We let in our welcome book, we'll give them the emergency vet number, because you never know when something happens. And one of my guests, oh, this is so sad. I didn't know this. So I was in one of our properties just doing some, you know, refurbishing. We have our guests sign a guest book, you know, like, tell us what you did. Love to hear from us. And while they were at our house, they had to put their dog down. Yeah, so sad. But I didn't know that till after they had left. And I mean, it was like a couple of weeks because I don't go to the properties. I was reading, you know, what people said. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I reached out and called the lady. I said, I am so sorry. And she goes, no, we just loved your house. I mean, because that was the last place her dog was at.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we talk about people getting vacation away. And I never thought about this before, but right before Mother's Day, I had a couple reach out to me to, you know, book one of our properties. And it turns out that her and her husband were just looking for a restful weekend because their 4-year-old son had gone through, he was either 2 or 4, had gone through a terrible illness, which ultimately ended in the child dying. Oh. They were just wanting to get away. So, I mean, the story was so heartbreaking. I was just like, and I felt honored that they would come to my house and feel rested and, you know, kind of recharging is what she put it. But if you think about it, if they go to a hotel, then they know, you know, in their mind, they know that they're away. But if they come to a house, doesn't have any personal pictures, it's just a place where they can relax. So, you know, we're providing, you know, just not a vacation getaway, but places where people can recharge their batteries and reconnect as a family. And that was kind of really eye-opening for me. I feel really like, I felt very honored that they chose my house.
People go away to homes with other family members and extended members of their family, and they create memories at your house. I'm sure there's hundreds of people that have photos in your house on their phones that, you know, I'd probably love to see some of the ones that were taken at our place next door. Probably some I don't want to look at, but but they've made memories at your property. And it sounds like you create, you know, one lesson I'm taking from what you're saying is, you know, creating such a warm and welcoming environment. And, you know, it adds a little more humanity behind the real estate. And I feel as though the finances will come. I mean, like, there's a limit as to how much you have to do to the property.
Yes.
Like, you're certainly not going to put in some things that are just, you're not going to make your money back on it. But Rory and I have done is all the ones that we're doing, we want to stay in ourselves. We do stay in ourselves, and we wanted to have all the creature comforts when we're there. Like the mattresses that we're putting in now, like the first round of everything was kind of just get it going. But the second round was, no. I found a mattress that I like sleeping on. So I'm going to get that in all of our places. And it's not the cheapest mattress, you know, like Nora on Wayfair, and we like Tuft and Needle. And Tuft and Needle is like, you know, the king is like $1,300. Rather get that in there because I like sleeping on it. And I'm guessing other people are going to want to sleep on it too.
I totally agree with that, because this little house I was talking about, we had a 1031 exchange that we just had to buy a property. So we bought this house and we're like, maybe I'll make a good Airbnb. It's not in like the best location. It's, you know, it's just a 3-bedroom. It'd make a good long-term rental, but we thought, well, what the heck, we'll try it, right? Because it was close to this historic downtown area. And we furnished everything in it from Facebook Marketplace, except for we went out and got really nice mattresses. And that house and then we did invest in a hot tub because it had an area patio cover. That little house has been a moneymaker. Like I didn't even have in the beginning, I didn't even have professional photos I just, clipped them. But I think it was just the way we brought it all together and it looks homey. You know what I mean? It's not like I went out and bought all this new furniture and it just kind of blew me away. So then we said, okay, we're going to get professional photographs and everything, raise the price, and we're off and running.
And those homes that are not always in the best area also work out great sometimes because you never know why people are traveling. Everybody understands, if people are traveling to the Marquee Beach, that they're going there on vacation and that's what they want to do. But there are all these communities that are underserved by hotels. People need to come and stay close to family. They need to attend a work event. They just want to meet up with family and friends they haven't seen in a while. There are many reasons why people travel. And you're sometimes surprised by, what communities actually turn out to be good short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about this conference that you're putting on, because I'm sure you're going to talk about short-term rentals at this conference. And we could probably go on for another 5 hours about short-term rentals. But I got to hear about the conference though, because this episode is going to be coming out just a few weeks before you put the conference on. And I want to hear how it came together, why you're doing it, what you expect from it, and how people can find their way to the conference.
All right. Thank you so much. So it's called the Inspire Conference, and we targeted women who want to get into real estate investing or take their real estate investing to the next level. If you've been out there on Facebook, a lot of the conferences are men dominated, so to speak. Been to a lot of conferences, and I have been on stage a few times, but generally the people who are on stage are not the women that you want to hear from. I mean, they're usually, like, no offense, attorneys or marketing people, but they don't really get into the nitty gritty of how to structure an owner finance deal or how to, really get into the short-term rental business. So I have been, when I wrote my book, Winning Deals and Heels, that was really kind of a way to start showcasing some of the very successful real estate women that I know here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then, I've been successful in meetups, and women are hungry to get this information. They want a place that they can build, relationships. They can feel confident, what they're going to be learning. It's like a safety net, right? A lot of women that want to get into real estate, if their husband doesn't support them or their partner, they want to do it, but they need hand-holding. They need someone that is going to say, okay, this is exactly how you do a short-term rental. Not only are we going to talk about short-term rentals, we're going to go through the exact process of how you rehab a house. Not just about, let's compare the numbers and everything, but how do you go about making sure that, you know how to interview a contractor and what to say to make sure that they do the work that they're supposed to do. We're going to go into owner financing. We're going to go into the recession proof, which I know we were going to talk a little bit about, but just how to read any market, how to make money in any real estate market, how to generate the leads, how to deals. When you find a deal, how do you tell if it's really a deal? So there's not anything that we're not going to cover. I mean, it's a 2-day intense hands-on conference that when you walk away, you're going to know exactly how to implement the tools and the process and the systems to get your business starting or scaling.
Where is it?
It's going to be in Granbury, Texas on September 15th and 16th. And we're having a kind of celebratory exit dinner Saturday at one of my Airbnbs. We have an amazing keynote speaker named Abby Reich. She's been on The Biggest Loser. She has an amazing story of inspiration. The city of Granbury is actually giving us a kickoff the day of. And the cost of the conference does include the meals, except for Friday night, but everything else we're going to feed you. And then we got an awesome deal at a local hotel there. So we're going to take care of everybody. We have a videographer coming that's going to film the whole thing. So everyone will be able to get, copies of the conference itself and the speakers. And then they'll also be able to really network one-on-one with every single one of the speakers. So we want to just invite the women. However, guys, if you want to come, what we're going to do is say, okay, we've got other activities for you. So my husband, Brian's actually, he's going to be taking out some fishing buds and golfing. And so we got some other activities for the men, but this is really focused on women learning about the systems and the process and the tools they need to be successful real estate investors, like the four of us that are giving the conference.
I also think it's important for a support network to support people that are doing this real estate journey. I mean, like, it is not easy to do on your own. I mean, we've had many people on this podcast before that have talked about the importance of your network, the importance of building a great, strong network of people, whether they're contractors or whether they just support people, your family members, your spouse, like that, they are with you on the journey. So I'm glad you've invited the men along or the partners along, even if they're not coming to the sessions, because they're going to be the ones that are talking back in the hotel room afterward or on the way to the conference about what's learned.
Yeah, and we wanted to be inclusive. And the reason we focused on the women is it just seems that there's a real need there for the education, the support systems, and also having a networking group of women like-minded, that we all think about the same things, that we, because sometimes women are a little bit different in the way we think about how we approach business and things like that. So it's kind of that approach that's maybe a little different than men.
Yeah. The Airbnb that we're in right now, you see all the stenciling behind me. I have women in mind for this property. Like, I actually want this to look so humming on TikTok and Instagram. And I want women to look at it and say, that's going to be the cutest cabin. Honey, let's go up to that place. So we're trying to appeal to women. I think it's super important that women are involved in this industry. We have a lot of women on this podcast as well, because we just need to hear lots of varying voices. I couldn't agree more. Rory, how many times do we go to networking events and it's all dudes? Right?
Yeah, the real estate investor community, two minds. I mean, on one hand, it's very meritocratic in that it invites people in from all walks of life. And if you're willing to do the work and take the risks and learn, you can be successful. It's also very cooperative. We look out and people are willing to trade their insights, their knowledge, their experience with everybody else. But at the same time, when you do go look at the networking events, men are overrepresented in just the spaces that we've seen. So I know that something needs to, to be done to make sure that, despite the strengths of the real estate investor community, there's room for improvement in how we invite everybody into it.
Yeah. And I think that, as a older female, I can say this, that it's really hard to find, especially if you're starting out. I was not in my 20s when I started real estate investing. And so, sometimes when you want to start, you might be a little bit later in life. You might think, oh, I'm late to the game, but you have a lot of fear as well. Fear that you don't want to lose the money that you already have, that you've worked all your life, kind of have fear of the future too, like unknown. And I think that's why it's important for women to build this safety net so they feel confident and secure, and they can ask any question. They can bring, any deal, sometimes we think it's a deal and then we all kind of walk through and like, now that's not really a deal, but there is a way to monetize leads, which is different than, do I have a deal? It's like, well, you might have a good lead, maybe a deal for a short-term rental, but maybe it's a deal for another type. And when you're starting out or even trying to scale, there's no way you can know how to even determine what you should do with the property. There's just no way when you're first starting out. There's too much to learn. Because I always tell people, get really good at one strategy, and then move to the next one, add it to your portfolio.
I mean, these are amazing words. I'm sure you're going to hear more of at the conference also. And we will make sure that we link up your website along with the Inspire conference in the show notes for this, so everyone can go purchase tickets and learn more from Nancy.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's at winningdealsinheels.com that they can find the conference.
Winning Deals in Heels. That's great. Is that your book too? That's the name of the title?
Yes, that's the name of the book. And I want to say this one more thing about the conference, because we want to inspire women. My book, Winning Deals in Heels, and also the Inspire Conference, proceeds of the conference and the book benefit a nonprofit here in Plano, Texas called Hope's Door. And what they do is they help families heal from domestic violence. They have a resale shop. They help people move ahead. And I think it's important, because as a woman, I love giving back to my community. I think as you reach, a certain level of success, or whether you don't, you should always give back and help your fellow woman.
Well, we're building up a nice library of guests who are female, who are doing awesome things in real estate. We spoke with Natalie Palmer, who is an Airbnb coach. Many, many months ago, we spoke with Sabrina Osso, who has a solution to keep people safe in their homes and their domiciles, free from domestic violence and any kind of situations that are ugly that happen in all of our residences. We spoke a couple episodes ago with Sam Riccio and her husband, and she is a licensed GC in Boston, and she is just killing it with renovations. Now we're speaking with you, Nancy, who is doing some great things for women of all ages also. And you mentioned something about, you're never too young to start doing this. I started doing real estate investing in my 40s also, and you're never too young to do it. I totally
Never
get the
too
whole
young.
fear.
That's right. Never too young.
Right. Never too old either. I get the fear. You've earned all this money and you want to make sure you don't lose it. But the flip side to our story is we parlayed the money that we earned and it accelerated. I mean, we've just maybe lucky that we made some good bets, but we've also been smart. But the acceleration over the past couple of years has been nothing like I'd seen in the previous years. And that's kind of the power of real estate investing. As long as you do it the right way, you catch a little bit of luck, you're good at it, you build systems, you talk to people like Nancy and others. I think it's a home run. So why don't we get into our final questions and then we'll wrap things up here, Nancy.
Okay.
How's that sound? Good. All right. We ask these same 3 questions of all of our guests here on the podcast. We'd love to hear your responses. The first one, I bet you're going to be able to answer very easily. Number 1, if you can get on stage for a half hour and talk with no preparation about any subject in the world, what would it be?
Okay, I'm going to go with blood bank management. I used to be a blood bank manager, and I have traveled all over the US and Canada and England, helping blood banks become more efficient in collecting blood from their donors in hospitals. And I could spend another 5 hours talking about that, but that's what I used to do in my former career before I became a real estate investor. I've actually my first publication was in a magazine called Transfusion Medicine. It happened after 9/11. Myself, I was in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, and my counterpart in San Francisco, we were asked to do a first-time donor study because after 9/11, a lot of people came out and donated, but unfortunately, they couldn't use the blood and they had to tell people to stop. Well, the higher-ups wanted to know what kind of made people want to donate the first time. So over the course of a year, we each had 3,000 new blood donors. And we put them in a group and we said, okay, is it a t-shirt? Is it just, the feeling good part? And then after we did all the data, we gave it to because remember, I'm not a data person or techie person. We gave it all to the doctors and that was published in Transfusion Medicine, whatever year that was.
Rory, did you let your transfusion medicine subscription lapse? Because I don't think I saw that.
But I have a copy somewhere in a box because I was like, well, how many times am I going to be in transfusion medicine? So I would talk about what that career was like as a blood bank consultant.
We've never heard that before. No one has talked about that on this podcast.
Yeah, that's the first one, yes.
Congratulations for being unique. Our second question is, tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
So I would have to say when we got into real estate investing was back in 2005, 8, whenever the big market crash was going on. And then at the time we had been I was not in real estate. I was a blood bank management consultant. And we'd been living in our house for about 8 years. Well, in our neighborhood, we lived in Gilbert, Arizona, which was at the time one of the fastest growing cities in America. We saw these houses selling for a lot of money. My husband and I said, hey, we were not in our 20s. And I said, when can we have kind of money? And we literally quit our jobs, sold our house in 3 weeks and moved to Texas. And that is how my real estate career, it wasn't that I was so smart about real estate. It's like I saw an opportunity and I said, we're going to take it. And I said, we're smart. If it all else, we'll have this money, but we're smart. We can get jobs anywhere. And I had no idea that would lead me into a real estate investing career. And my first job, if you will, because I really wanted to get into it, the lady I told you about that I wanted to mentor me, she made me read the book, Gary Keller's book, How to Become a Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And I read that back to her, let me buy my first property. And I said, okay, I'm going to come and work for you because I want to learn how to be a property manager. And she wouldn't hire me because I didn't have experience. Okay, I've been all over everywhere. I just said I was a blood bank management consultant. She wouldn't hire me. And so I talked her into hiring me for 1 month with no pay. I told her that it'll be well worth it. And that's what she did. And we went on to become partners in a property management company.
So many lessons there. I mean, one of them is if you see an opportunity, go take it. And that's one of the differences between people that just never get started and the people that are just, off on their way.
Especially my husband. I mean, it's not like we're risky people. And I mean, butterflies. We probably had butterflies in our stomach. I mean, just to quit our jobs. I mean, we literally quit our jobs and moved, sold our house in 3 weeks, came to Texas. It was crazy. Yeah. Craziest 3 weeks of my life. So
it's something that a lot of people listening to this are also saying, how do I have the courage to do that? Hearing stories like yours, hopefully will give people, that added emphasis to why it's a good idea, to take that risk.
And the fear, because we had fear. I mean, it's not like we're sitting here, we had a lot of fear about, oh my gosh, are we doing the right thing? People thought we were crazy. I mean, we both had really good jobs at the time. My family thought I was crazy. Our friends thought we were crazy. I just say, who's laughing now?
No regrets. Our final question for you. Tell us something that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days.
Okay, so I love Brendan Bouchard. He was kind of new to me, and I find him very motivational. I listen to his podcast. He has a lot of inspirational podcasts, but he also is a great marketeer. And some of the things he talks about, like if you're trying to brand yourself, get yourself out there, I just love his energy. So I listen to him.
We will check out Brendan. I'm not familiar with Brendan.
The Direct Playbook. That's how to get direct bookings for your short-term rentals.
Yeah, that's something we have to work on a little bit here. I do have a strategy, actually, since we have one and a second one coming in line, where we already have built up a database of basically 6 years of rentals, is that I can go back to some of them and talk about the new properties. Not sure if I could do it on Airbnb. They really locked that platform down. But, that's something that I'm going to kind of get my head around. But, direct bookings, great way to save money for your guests, save money for yourself. And taking more control. And if you have great
guests, you can invite them back. So There's a little tip about accelerate that. So in our short-term rentals, we have registration cards that we ask people to fill out. Remember that guest book I was telling you about? Mm-hmm. So it has all their contact info.
Oh, what a great idea. Yeah. I've always shied away from the guest book because I didn't want people reading through any issues that might have happened in the past. That was my mindset with it.
Oh, but you know what? I think because it's it's like, welcome to our imperfect house or something. I think I bought it off at Etsy. I'm not sure, but it's very like it asks for positive things. I've never had anybody. I think the one thing that somebody wrote was, I wish you would have given us more instructions on how to do your Nest thermostat.
Yeah.
Because even I find it, but other than that, it's all been very positive. Because if they take the time to write out, about their family trip, I've not, like the lady wrote about her dog or whatever. And I guess if I did find one, I would just get a new book.
Yeah. Put the email addresses in your database still.
Yeah. So, and then the people that then you can invite them. And this book I was talking about, it was actually by, I think his name's Boosley. They're out of the UK, called The Direct Playbook. And he has a lot of good tips in there about how to kind of do the direct booking and, how you can, really connect with the people that you want back to your properties.
Lots of great advice there on direct bookings. Also, we have a lot of homework to do as a result of this. Rory, any final thoughts for Nancy?
I've taken a lot of good notes here. A couple of things that we want to put into action here at the Airbnbs. And we have an opportunity here as we have another one coming online. Hopefully by the time everybody sees this podcast, somebody else will be staying here, but that's what we're working on. So,
oh my God, if that's not the case, then we have bigger problems.
Call me.
Yeah.
Rory, where can everyone find you?
If you're looking for me, you can find me at my real estate brokerage, Next Home Titletown, nexthometitletown.com, or my law practice, Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
And if you want to find me, reach out to me at jason@nexthometitletown.com. Any questions, concerns, comments about the podcast, we read them all. If you want to give this podcast a rating or you want to give us some messages wherever you're watching this, if it's on YouTube, you could put a comment in the comment section. If it's for Nancy, we could pass it along to Nancy. We also respond to all the comments that we get. So Nancy, thank you so much. This has been an excellent conversation. We have to revisit this conversation after your conference so we could hear how it went, and we can continue this conversation on. Yes. So we wish you the best. If you're listening to this still, go sign up for her conference. If you're going to be in Texas, or take a trip down there and enjoy it. Spend some time with Nancy. She's a bubbly personality. You could hear right through the screen. I could tell that you are going to be friends with everyone that leaves that conference. They're going to be, you'll be signing all those books that they bought.
That's right. Well, they actually get a book if they come to the conference.
They get a book, and Nancy will sign that book.
We got a lot of freebies for them. So. Well, thanks guys for having me on. I've had a lot of fun, and it was great.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. You have so many great things to say and so much insight, and we can't wait to have you back on the podcast again. So thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Rory. And I'm Jason. Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Law Podcast. See ya.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Council, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.